Alright, here we are. Here is the vehicle. 1958 Chevrolet Apache 36. And the task at hand, get this thing to breathe life again. Oh yeah, this is not the original motor. Originally this came with a straight 6 235, I believe. And I didn't realize how big of a problem it was going to be to find out what parts to put in when you don't know what engine it is or what it came out of or year or anything. This thing's been sitting for quite a while. Reference the tree root growing up through the grill there. And the last date on the license plate for the tags is 1990. So, it's been sitting for a while. Had to remove the gas tank before you fire it up. Obviously you don't want to pump a bunch of sludge into it because it's not going to go anywhere then. So remove that tank after 3 times flushing it out with water, 1 time using a mild detergent, then blowing all the dust out, vacuuming all the dust out. After 3 passes it doesn't smell like varnish anymore and the 2 inches of debris and sludge are gone out of it. Now I have to rebuild the fuel lines. That this drops down through a hole, connects to the sensor that has to get replaced. I'll show you the condition of that fuel gauge sensor. Yeah, we don't want to try sucking fuel through that for a startup, so that has to be ordered. It only serves one function. This is just a fuel gauge. It's not actually an electric fuel pump, but that's where the fuel gets sucked up from the tank, distributed to this line that drops down, which then converts to some rotted pieces like that. And let's take a trip under. Comes down through the floor, connects to this, set a bunch of sludge in it, and then that rolls all the way up to the front. And comes right to here. Put a new piece of rubber, fuel filter that it didn't have before. That's the mechanical fuel pump. When I finally go to start this thing up, crank over and this thing should pump out. And I'm going to leave this line off so it can pump all the garbage out before we send it back into the carburetor. Not sure what spark plugs to get. I ordered some based on the information I got off the block and the head, but they don't seem right at all. So that's what I was talking about. I didn't know how much trouble it was going to be to find the right parts. There was some loose plugs laying around the box of parts that it came with. They're way smaller than the ones they gave me at AutoZone, which I don't think were correct. Went to AutoZone and all they can do is look it up from the year and model of the vehicle, which doesn't help us in any way since this is not the motor from 1958. So I went in there and tried to tell them I had a small block 400 based on what the block said, but the problem being, I think, why the plugs look way longer, like they wouldn't work at all. I probably should have went off the number off heads, I guess. The heads come up with a different, they come up as a 350-400 based on the number that's printed on the heads. The block itself says it's a small block 400. Now, I don't have any idea if that's going to be a problem or not. I'm guessing not, since the heads are listed as 350-400, meaning they'll either fit one or the other. But it became a problem because I didn't know which plugs to get now, and I'm not sure if the old ones that are all rusted out and they were actually the right ones. Now look how old and bad this engine looks. Looks like it's been sitting forever. Take a look at the inside of the intake manifold. That looks like it's never had fuel run through it ever. So that is a good sign. And also when I pop one of the valve covers off, everything looks new. There's no sludge deposits at all, which leads me to believe it may not have ever pumped any oil from the bottom to the top through the push rods. So I don't know if they slapped this in here and gave up. The spark plugs were out of it and they're all rusted, so that wasn't very smart on their part. Whoever abandoned it like that, let all the moisture and stuff get in there. Don't know if this motor will turn over. I don't really have anything to attach to that, and there is no bolt in the center to put a socket on to try by hand. So I'd either have to get some kind of plate to go on there, and you wouldn't want to try to crank that over and snap one of those bolts off where the pulley goes to. So I'm just going to wait. The fuel system will be cleaned out, throw some plugs in it, put the distributor cap back on there, and hook power to it and see what the hell happens. Don't know if anything will happen. But that's where we're at. Had to start with the fuel because we don't want to pump a bunch of bad fuel in there. Nothing's gonna fire up with varnish and sludge. And let's see, put a piece of carpet under there. They had some kind of old batting material, like fiber shit that was all rotted and moldy. So I just stashed a little piece of carpet in there to give it some padding so it don't squirrel and squeak. Got to reconnect that stuff after. Oh yeah, the other project is brakes. Brakes are locked up and frozen. I'm not going to look into that though until I see if I can get it running. There'd be no reason to do brakes on a car with a motor in it that doesn't turn over. Here's a little crazy, what I'm guessing is the little miniature master cylinder for the brakes. That's a reservoir, and I put fluid in and pumped the brakes, but nothing happened. But normally you would see your brake booster and reservoir mounted up on the firewall here. I did find a YouTube video that actually had one, but it looked like the guy had put a whole new setup and just bolted it there. Because I was kind of thinking this looked like a spot where something like that might have been. Don't know if that's for something that just got gutted and never replaced, or if that's actually where a different reservoir sat. And then of course we'll have to redo these wires. The insulation's all compromised. These are all snapped off in a bunch of places. Luckily though, old motor, no smog, no brain, pretty damn simple. This actually looks like an old school generator instead of an alternator. And I have no idea if that's going to do anything. That won't stop from trying to start it though. That's just going to supply your power to keep it from dying when you turn the lights on and whatnot, so I don't really give a shit about that. One little thing to note, this is definitely not the same bracket assembly. In some of the videos I saw, this was actually on the other side, but they had dropped a different motor in theirs too. But if you look at this pulley here, if you look at that crankshaft, that harmonic balancer, I think that's called, they don't actually seem to be in a line, which is going to be a serious trouble. If your belt's twisted, it's just going to come off or shred, because it looks like the motor's actually tipped back a little bit. And this actually looks like it's plumb and level. Won't know if that's a problem until later. The water pump's not frozen. That spins. Looks like they bypassed something here. This must have had a heater or something, because there's no way they would make this from the factory with a 2-foot hose going 6 inches away. Don't care about that either, but that is obviously goes somewhere else, and they just scabbed that together to bypass maybe a heater box. Don't know. Anyway, tank's done. Fuel lines are almost done. I am going to leave this one off, so when we crank it, it'll blow all the shit that's probably inside this fuel pump out before we send it into the motor. And that's where we're at now. Oh, there's the hood. There's another tree root. So yeah, this thing was embedded somewhere for a good while. This is another story altogether. There's all kinds of fucking wiring just dangling down, and I don't see a fuse box anywhere. You could theoretically run a vehicle without one, but without a fuse to stop it, what happens is your wires burn up whenever there's a problem. Anyway, That's an update of the Apache 36 trying to come back to life. Oh yeah, here's something. They put in a steel bed. I'm guessing the guy knew how to weld. Because if you look under, hey, there's the wood bed. There is the wood bed in all its tore up glory. So his method was a fast solution, but the right way would have been to remove this wood and replace it, and then they actually look slick when you stain them and everything. That'll be for the future owner of this vehicle. And yeah, this is not a frame off restoration, this is just a get it running and get it so it'll drive out of here project, and then somebody else will be taking over. Man, that hood is heavy. One thing about this, you get in a crash in this truck, you will come out okay, I am guessing. If you look at today's cars, there's so much plastic. This thing is so much steel. This thing's got to weigh 6,000 pounds. Alright, that's the update.